Hey, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am one half of the dynamic duo that is the Splash Cast. I am Reggie. I'm here just to kind of get off a couple thoughts and a couple opinions. I think I'm going to call this either the patio, which, if you remember, I kind of launched that a while back where I was talking about music and sports and kind of getting everything off of my chest that I had thoughts of. Um, or I might call it the best seat in the house. I haven't decided yet, but it's all goes back to when you guys can just join, kick it with me, and we can all just talk about whatever, some of the trending topics or latest headlines when it comes to sports. Specifically, as you can see, I am a Braves fan, Falcons fan, UGA fan, Hawks fan, fan of the Revolution. Um, all of those things. So hopefully in the near future, I'll be able to do a little bit more and get some of these conversations off and really engage you guys in having discussions. Today, for example, I actually wanted to talk about the Atlanta Falcons in the offseason. It is now the NBA Finals, which means we're coming up on June. I think right now it is actually June 1st. So for football fans, this is the training camp, OTAs, trade speculations, depth chart. This is when you're really getting into the nuts and bolts of your 2025 roster, right? 2025, 2026 roster, team makeup, if you will. So let's talk about, of course, the Falcons, and this is what we're going to get into. The regular season is 90 days away, I believe, somewhere in there, 89, 90 days away. And the Falcons have made significant changes through the draft, through free agency, through a whole lot of movement in the offseason. There's still more speculation and movement that will be made. Of course, there's Kirk Cousins. We got rid of Grady Jarrett, didn't want to re-sign him. We drafted Jalen Walker and James Pierce on the edge to try to address those things. We got a steal at safety. We got two steals, really. I think Billy Bowman is a safety, is a steal as well. But we still have some things that we need to iron out. We lost, is it Dahlman? Yeah, we lost Dahlman at center to Chicago. Paid a lot for him, but we just re-signed Ryan Newzel. Is it Neuheisel or Newzel to be our center? So there's a lot of things that are going on, but for me, I think the biggest news that came out this past week and has really been going on for the last 7 days is multiple teams have reached out about Kyle Pitts. So Kyle Pitts is kind of a wild card to me, not for just this regime, but for also this offense. Um, Little backstory: Kyle Pitts was drafted in 2021, fourth overall pick, highest pick for a tight end ever in the history of the NFL draft. Um, he went over people like, I think number 5 was Jamar Chase. There were other people as well. I think Penix went 1 or 2, went like 2 or 3 in this draft. So Kyle Pitts was very highly regarded coming out of college, coming out of University of Florida. 6'5", 240 pounds, runs a 4.44, 540. He was viewed as like the next iteration, the golden unicorn. He is the basketball. He is the football version of the positionless wing in basketball. Um, and had and when I say great, I mean a great rookie year. 2021 had 110 targets, 68 catches, 1,000 yards. So what I want to talk about today, and like I said, I titled this video "The Case for Kyle Pitts" because I want to go over whether we should, the pros and cons, I should say, and reasons why you keep him and why you cut him or trade him. And I won't say cut, or why you trade him. As I said before, multiple teams have reached out, and the thing is, Kyle Pitts, for the most part, if it were me, I would keep him. His talent and potential are breathtaking. I already gave y'all the measurables before. 6'5", 240, runs a 4.5, 4.40. But here's the thing why I would keep him. And I have some notes here. So if I look over to the side, I'm not looking at the graphic, but I'm looking at some notes. Elite talent. You guys can see from his rookie year, when he has a competent quarterback, he is very, very productive. 110 targets, 68 receptions, 1,000 yards, and a touchdown. Not gonna blame the one touchdown on him. He should have had more, should have more in his career. But you know, we also had Julio Jones, who was possibly the best receiver of his generation, and he couldn't get more than 4 or 5 touchdowns in a year. So that's just something that the Falcons have always had an issue with, is getting their good players touchdowns. We're a running team when you get to the red zone. Yeah. So if you look at this graphic, Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke, and Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix Jr. He's played with 6 quarterbacks in 4 years. That's Cleveland Browns territory, right? That's awful. That's when it comes to, and I think he's also played with 3 offensive coordinators, if I'm not mistaken, because he was drafted when we had Matt Ryan. They then brought in Arthur Smith, and now we have Zach Taylor. So yeah, he's had 3 offensive coordinators. If he were a quarterback, they would be giving him all the leeway in the world. So I think his potential hasn't really been tapped yet because he's had bad quarterback play. Marcus Mariota did the barrel roll on the ground. Call back to one of our previous episodes from last year when he played against the Carolina Panthers, and he literally threw the ball while rolling and threw an interception. Desmond Ridder, I never thought I would say that there is a poor man's version of Marcus Mariota, but he is a poor man's version of Marcus Mariota. He is not that good. I think right now he's contemplating retirement. And then, of course, his replacement, who he split time with, Taylor Heineke. When I say that the Falcons have not had a quarterback room that has been settled since Matt Ryan, this is what I mean. Desmond Ridder, Marcus Mariota, and Taylor Heineke. He hasn't had the greatest stats. 43 receptions with Desmond Ridder in 15 games. 2 games with Taylor Heineke, 10. So, yeah, 53 receptions for about 670 yards. 3 touchdowns. Now, that's not good, but I don't know anybody that would have a good season with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke and Marcus Mariota that are their quarterbacks. So I think we got to give them a little bit of leeway on that. There have been so many reports of him actually working very well with Michael Penix Jr. I definitely noticed that there is a little bit of chemistry with Michael Penix. And I also would love to see how they use him in this offense with the little glimpse that we got. In 3 games with Michael Penix Jr., they used him really well. He was a seams tight end, which is what he was at Florida. They lined him up all over the field. So I think because he hasn't played well and he hasn't played, I think part of the reason he hasn't played well is bad quarterback play. I also think that now that he has stability at offensive coordinator, I think we could get a little bit more potential. We could get a little bit more production out of him. Lastly, his trade value right now, you got to look at that. Do you think if we keep him, we can drive the trade value up? Because I'm also not real big on. I'm not real big on a player doing well during the contract year and then you giving them a big contract and then they flop. I think the Falcons have been the victim of that multiple times, especially at DB. We always seem to sign older guys. And I don't want that to happen. Kyle Pitts, on the other hand, is only like 24, 25. So if you can get him for like 2 more years, maybe a 1-and-1, you pay him a little bit higher of a salary, maybe, I don't know, whatever the going rate for tight ends is, 10 million, 9 million a year for 2 years with a team option. That gives you a little bit more evaluation time. Or you sign him for a little bit lower, but he gets a player option. And you lose kind of control over it. But to me, it doesn't make sense to trade him right now because the only teams that everybody benefits from Kyle Pitts except for us, right? If we trade Kyle Pitts, unless we get a high second round pick, we're pick starved. So unless we were to get a high second round pick or a third round pick, I don't want a fifth or sixth round pick. It doesn't seem worth it to me, especially because you can probably negotiate where he is now. Um, and plus, I already told you about chemistry. Uh, him being with Michael Penix Jr., working with Michael Penix Jr., having somebody with a strong arm that is mobile in the pocket. And when I say mobile in the pocket, I don't mean a running quarterback. Michael Penix Jr. can navigate the pocket from what we saw. He's much better at navigating the pocket than Kirk Cousins. So I think with all of those things, I think you'll get a more Matt Ryan type season, even though we have so many weapons on offense. I think he could be an absolute mismatch. He's too big for linebacker. I mean, he's too big for safeties and too fast for linebackers. So I'm very, very curious what we do with him. Now, if you keep him, if you decide to keep Kyle Pitts, Zach Taylor, you have to figure out how to use him and use him correctly. He's a 6'5" hybrid, not really good at blocking. I don't know if I would put him in line as much. Maybe you use him to crash down the same way we're using Drake London to kind of crash down and block on toss sweeps and counters. I think we should use Kyle Pitts in that space. He could unlock and activate your play action pass. If you use Kyle Pitts in the seams, which is what we did. When I say seams, I mean seam routes, running up the seam, the hash marks, which we did a lot again when we put in Michael Penix Jr. Michael Penix Jr. can make those throws over the linebacker and before the safeties, and Kyle Pitts is big enough to box them out. We saw it against Washington on that last pass of regulation. I believe if they use him in the manner where they create mismatches uh, for him, and by depending on formation, you could create mismatches for everybody else through motion. I believe he is the ultimate possession receiver for us. Whenever we need 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 yards, we could do it. Whenever we need somebody to go over the seam and get us 10, 12 yards, when they're double teaming Drake London and Darnell Mooney and all of those things, I believe Kyle Pitts is that guy. He allows us to run multiple plays out of one or two formations because he's a tight end. But you have to use him correctly. I do have a question for y'all, though. Do you believe, and I know some people are going to argue me down about this, but do you believe Kyle Pitts was actually used effectively? And if not, do you agree with me on the way that I would say we should use him in terms of seams and creating mismatches? A lot of people want to use him more as like a de facto wide receiver number 2, and I don't think that's the best way to use him. I think you can line him up at wide receiver at times, but I think the best way to use him is to create mismatches where he's in kind of like an H-back position and you just move him all over the field. Um, like I said, that's the role I envision. How do y'all see? How do y'all see Atlanta using him this year, assuming that he'll be on the field? How do y'all see him using him? Y'all let me know in the comments. Remember, always like, follow, subscribe, tell a friend, tell a friend. Let's move on to the case for trading him. So if you trade Kyle Pitts, we can bring up the graphic again. he has been overwhelmingly disappointing when it comes to production. He seems uninterested. He seems a step behind. It seems that he's frustrated with Atlanta, and it may be shout out to KG and Paul Pierce. It may be time for some fresh air. I think last year he had the worst year of his career. Worst receiver errors of any tight end. Now he probably would have been looked at different if they counted that touchdown against Kansas City. That would have done things. But he was number 41 of 43 when it comes to tight ends getting open. Um, Number 55 in yards after catch, number 75 in run blocking, and he effectively was uh outsnapped by Charlie Warner, who was, I believe, 7th round draft pick out of UGA over the final 7 weeks with a career low 1.34 yards per route, which means he's running slants and out routes or stops. That's not good for somebody that's supposed to be the ultimate weapon. I think that graphic for sure shows us that he was frustrated and uninterested. I do believe that he was frustrated, uninterested, and also injured. Or part of the things that we discussed when talking about the reasons to trade him is his injury history. I mean, let's be honest. His injury history is awful. Unfortunately, he had the ACL, which was a terrible, somebody went low on a catch and tore his ACL. And then he's had nagging injuries. I think last year he had the foot injury that kind of sidelined him for multiple weeks. Um, so if you're gonna have the injury concerns, the foot issue that he's not at OTAs now, which is be a wonderful time to work with Michael Penix Jr. even more, and especially in the flow of the offense. You already have Michael Penix, Bijan Robinson, Drake London. I believe Mooney is there. Ray McLeod is there. So you have everybody else there. It'd be awesome for you to be there on the field. Now, I will say reports came out that he wasn't there at OTAs, but he was actually at OTAs, but he was getting treatment along with some of the other veterans as well. So, his injury history is concerning. The contract situation, I said before, you have to figure out a way to get him to sign even a contract. If you're going to keep him, you have to figure out a way to sign him to a 1 or 2 year extension now before it's too late, or you risk losing him for nothing. Because you did not pick up the 5th year option, he is going to be an unrestricted free agent after this year. Well, if he's going, I do understand why you did not pick up the 5th year option, because I believe that would have had him making over $10 to $12 million a year as a fourth round pick. I mean, as a fourth pick overall. So I understand why you didn't do it. But now he could leave without you getting any compensation, or he could have a reluctance to play. He already doesn't have the greatest productivity. If he's trying, I'm not trying to question his motive, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, this is a job, and if I don't have a contract, I'm not gonna put my body on the line the way I would if you invested in me and believed in me, right? That's something that players in the NFLPA have been discussing for years and years and years. So if I'm Kyle Pitts and I don't have a contract, I'm gonna be more cautious. I may not try to run through the defensive end or run over somebody or do whatever, because I know I need to get that contract. Um, so you have to kind of figure out what you're gonna do when it comes to his contract. And the best thing to do if you cannot reach a contract extension is probably to trade him. So if you do trade him, again, multiple teams have reached out. You probably trade him for picks. The Atlanta Falcons, let me look this up real quick, because I know we traded away some things. The Atlanta Falcons are going to be pick starved next year, because we traded away our 1st round draft pick next year for to move up this year. So let's look at our future draft pick status. Well, so the 2026 draft picks, the Atlanta Falcons have. Where's the comment? I think we have a 2nd round pick. I think we have a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th and 7th. So I don't think we have a first or fifth round pick next year. So knowing about Terry Fontenot's draft profile and how he's 75% likely to move up in the draft every year or try to. If you trade Kyle Pitts this year for a second or third round pick, you could then package those picks together to move back into the first round to get whatever you need. And you kind of get off of that contract, and you can probably get a more role player type tight end versus a guy that sees himself as a number one and number two option, which he has said through multiple times. So it provides draft capital, especially with multiple teams. You may be able to trade him and get a cornerback two back. So the Falcons defense, which has been the focus really of this entire offseason, has addressed a lot of issues. We've addressed the strong safety type position. We've addressed the defensive end position / linebacker position and free agency in the draft. We brought in a bunch of pieces where we have a free for all when it comes to nickelback. But the one thing we did not address to me adequately enough is cornerback two. So there's a lot of free agents. There's of course the Jalen Ramsey discussion, which Kyle Pitts could be involved in the trade to the Dolphins for Jalen Ramsey. I don't know if I would do that because of his contract. Or you have players that are free agents out there. For me, I've always said kick the tires on Asante Samuel Jr. I think he'd be a really, really good cornerback too. But if you do want to trade for a cornerback, I believe Kyle Pitts could be used as trade bait to get a cornerback number two and then move the rest of the DBs around and create kind of that Houston Texans, Kansas City Chiefs type defense where you have your bookend cornerback, and then everybody else plays every position. And your nickel back is kind of your do-it-all guy. I think we could do something like that. So you have those things and you have those options to trade him. But there's also another trade scenario that I believe could work out. You could package him with Kirk Cousins. You've been trying to get off the Kirk Cousins bandwagon for a while. And you're holding steady. You're not allowing anybody to like bully you into either cutting Kirk Cousins, including Kirk Cousins, cutting him and letting him walk, and you eating $40 million in caps. We're not doing all of those things. You're holding fast. Maybe a way to entice a team like Pittsburgh, like I don't know anybody else that needs a quarterback for real. New Orleans, who also probably they don't need a tight end, but you could use them. Is you use Kyle Pitts as trade bait. One thing I've always looked at is we love to block. We have Charlie Warner who outpaced Kyle Pitts because Kyle Pitts can't block. Maybe you trade Kyle Pitts, Kirk Cousins to the Steelers for a second round pick and Darnell Washington. Now, Darnell Washington is in the same issue of he's going to be in his fifth round option, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Pittsburgh Steelers picked up Darnell Washington. I don't think he has a fifth year option. So I think he has the potential to be an unrestricted free agent, but his salary cap hit should be a lot lower. And you'd be able to move off Kirk Cousins and get off Kyle Pitts and have a really good blocking tight end that's 6'8" that can also catch the ball and run the seams. So I would, if I were going to trade Kyle Pitts, the reasons I would trade him is injury history. I'm not confident that I can sign him for a contract extension, or he's going to want more money on a contract extension that I'm not willing to pay for. Or I could package him with Kirk Cousins and get him off the books and get off of Kirk Cousins as well. Maybe Tennessee. Tennessee has Cam Ward, but they already have a tight end now that I think about it. But maybe there's other places. The draft capital thing for the Falcons is necessary. And if Kyle Pitts truly does not want to be here, and I won't say does not want to be here. I know he wants to be here, but truly can't fit into this offense and doesn't blossom, you're at the point now where you have to make that decision. Y'all let me know in the comments. Would you support trading Kyle Pitts if it meant acquiring additional high draft picks? Or would you support trading him to a team, and which team is the best fit for Pitts and has the best return for the Falcons? I already told you Pittsburgh is the pie in the sky. You could probably get rid of both of those players. Overall, and this is the end of it. We're coming to the end. The pros of keeping Kyle Pitts. Let's go over one last time. Asset, the pros of keeping them. Offensive weapon, team chemistry. Kyle Pitts is still viewed as and could be a fan favorite because we want to get him the ball. There's a lot of times where he's been open and we just can't get him the ball. Of course, the cons of keeping him, he's a potential for recurring injuries and possible contract issues. Trading Pitts, draft capital, avoid contract issue. The cons of trading Pitts. If he does turn out to be really, really good and we just didn't use him correctly, that's going to make us look like even more of an inept franchise. And we are teetering on inept when it comes to our franchise under this regime because we cannot seem to get over the hump of making the playoffs and being a team, even though we have all of this talent. So last thing, should we trade Kyle Pitts? End all be all. Would you trade him? Would you keep him? Y'all let me know. I would love for you guys to. I would love to do a part 2 of this, and have you guys join, or have some of y'all join, and maybe I'll go live and have these conversations. And we can go from there. Next episode, I'm gonna try to do one of these, if not a day, at least one every 2 or 3 days. Let's talk about Kirk Cousins and figure out what's happening there. We'll try to let some of the news roll out. You're gonna have a whole lot of news when it comes to speculation because there's not a lot of concrete news coming out right now. So we'll talk about Kirk Cousins. We'll talk about cornerback too. We'll kind of preview the Falcons. This will be the summer schedule. We'll kind of preview the Falcons coming up. Who's going to be our breakout player on offense, on defense, all of those things. But what I need you guys to do before we do that is I need you guys to go to Dive Team Media on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. I need you guys to like, follow, and subscribe. Also follow the Splashcast. We have a couple more shows coming up. I think we're going to do some movie reviews. We have shows for movie reviews. We have health. We're trying to get into health as well, especially with mental health the aspects of it in competitive sports. We're working on that as well. With that being said, thank you guys for listening. Like, follow, subscribe, tell a friend, and let me know again, should we trade Kyle Pitts or not? Thanks.